who's ready? We're going to get started with our first Fireside chat to kick off at the starting line of our 4th annual Women with Drive Summit. This one is titled Living Your Career Dreams. It is presented by Gamebridge. The host of this Fireside chat, you know her as Lyn St. James, the legendary race car driver. If you were at the breakfast this morning, Doug Boles gave her quite the praise and accolades that she so deserves in front of this room. I'm excited to bring her to the stage now as the co-chair of Women with Drive and the co-founder of Women in Motorsports North America, Lyn St. James. Her first guest is the president of IMS, Doug Boles. Doug has served as the president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway since 2013. Doug joined IMS in 2010 as Director of Public Relations, then served as the Chief Operating Officer and VP of Communications after more than 15 years of executive-level motorsports experience. Doug earned a law degree from Indiana University School of Law following his degree from Butler University. He and his wife, Beth, who happens to be a championship water skier, enjoy outdoor activities, including skiing and hiking. They live in Zionsville. Doug Boles. Mel Raines, the CEO and president of the Indiana Pacers. As CEO, she oversees business operations for the Indiana Pacers, Indiana Fever, Indiana Ants, Pacers Gaming, as well as Gamebridge Fieldhouse. With more than 30 years of operations, legislative, political, corporate, and public affairs experience, was one of the principal architects of the Indianapolis 2012 Super Bowl as Vice President of Government Relations and Event Operations for the Host Committee. She is a graduate of Indiana University Bloomington, is on the board of directors of numerous Indianapolis-based organizations, including the Pacers Foundation, Indy Chamber, Visit Indy, and the Indianapolis Zoo. Mel Raines.
Thank you very much, Amanda, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming to this and demonstrating how important it is that we have these. So, you know, all of this is for you. So thank you, thank you. I've known Doug a long time. He made some very glowing remarks about me this morning, thank you. And I've had the honor now of meeting Mel. Heard a lot about you, but had the honor of meeting you in preparation for this. And, you know, I think we all may have a misconception sometimes about that dream job. You know, how we are, well, God, I wish I had that job, or I wish that job is my dream job. And I know when I came up with this idea, primarily, Doug, because of how well I know you and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I thought this was, and you said I never dreamed of ever having a job like this. So, and I kind of came to the same discussion when I talked to Mel, you know, that sometimes we have a misperception of what it takes to maybe find our space in the world or where we really come to life. And so I'm delighted to kind of have a great title and now talk about the fact that maybe that's not a great title, because maybe there really is no such as a dream job. It's how you really bring your dreams to the job that you have and how that brings that out. So I'm going to start with you, Doug, because of the fact that we go so far back. And I remember us having, you know, long before you had this position, having lunch from time to time and chatting about, in a way, the dream that we had for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy 500, when you were, you know, responsible working with Mayor Goldsmith in the initiatives for motorsports in Indiana, and actually used to talk about some of the things that if we had that job, if we were in charge, this is what we would do. So, man, you're now in charge. So, talk about, you know, this process a little bit, okay?
Well, first of all, it's pretty intimidating to sit up here with two rock stars in the industry. Lyn is an amazing race car driver who now is an amazing businesswoman who is as passionate about everyone in this room as anyone. She's an advocate for changing our sport to make it better. And I knew Lyn before she knew me, actually. I was an AP photographer one May, and Lyn was trying to qualify for the Indianapolis 500, and I was enamored with Lyn St. James. She was beautiful, she was smart, and she was fast. And over time, and Beth, my wife, makes fun of me, and I've started sending these to Lyn over the years. I started finding all these photos. It's scary how many photos I took of Lyn St. James in her JCPenney's fire suit getting ready to go driving. And if you don't know Mel, Mel is one of the smartest business people and one of the best advocates that this community has. Her history as a community servant, her work in the White House, her work here, working for our folks in Congress, but then really transforming the way that we view sports in Indianapolis. And we're so excited that the work that you do, the WNBA All-Star Game coming next year because of you having had the NBA All-Star Game, we're just really fortunate to have great leaders like you in our community. So for me, I sell tickets for a living, right? And I'm with these two. It's pretty crazy to think about, but you're right. This is not a dream job. This job really is just a continuation of my passion, and I think a lot of you in this room, or most of you in this room, can understand that. When you're passionate about something, no matter what you're doing for work, you try and find a way to put your passion into what you do. And fortunately, when I worked for Mayor Goldsmith, he was really interested in the fact that on the weekends I wasn't working for him. I was trying to figure out how to stay involved in racing. He said, well, let's figure out a way that I can take that passion you have on the weekends, because I want you working for me 7 days a week. And that's when we started going out trying to figure out how do you get businesses to relocate to the city? How do you make it easy for those businesses to come here? And I've just been that way my whole life, really. I chose to go to Butler University because it was close to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I went to work at the State House right out of school, and a team named Tom Walkinshaw Racing won the 24 Hours of Daytona, and we figured out a way to how to honor them on the house floor. You just were always trying to find ways to take your passion and build it into what you do, and somehow I was blessed and met a lot of people, and I work at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway now, and you call me the man in charge. I'm not. The person that's in charge are each of the folks that work for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They're our leaders. I just get the opportunity to represent them and hopefully help them solve problems. But I get to work for the most amazing people in the world, and they're as passionate about their sport and their community as anyone. And I get to do fun stuff like hang out with you two.
Well, and you're president, yes, but you're the most non-president or unpresidential person I know in that role. You're really more of a cheerleader, for the sport. And I know that I read anyway that you first came here the first time when you were 10 years old, and that you used to do 3x5 cards of all the different drivers. So I mean, it's in your DNA. But I have to add one more because this is a quote that I read from Beth. Is that
probably didn't give it this morning because those quotes weren't going to be as good today, probably. But go ahead.
But there are very few people that she would ever know that vibrates in the morning to get ready to go to work. You just vibrate, wanting to go to work. You can't wait. And that, to me, that isn't a dream job. That's where it is your dream coming to fruition, and being able to work in something that you were that passionate about. And that's a gift to a certain degree.
Yeah, and I am really passionate about what I do. I don't set an alarm because this morning at 3:30, you're going, okay, I'm ready to go. I love this so much. There's never been a day I didn't want to come to work, even on the tough days. And Mel and I were joking a minute off. It is our dream job, but there are days when it's really difficult. I mean, you're running a business and you're dealing with personnel issues, or you're dealing with all kinds of other things that don't fit. And what people see of me is the social media side of me. And the social media side of me is the fan that when I get to do something really cool, I've always said, man, I get to do this. And if I was a fan, I'd want to know this is going on. So they see all that and they go, oh, I want that job. So they see 10% of what I do and not the other 90% of what goes on. And so it is a real job that you have to deal with. But even in those difficult moments, or staying up all night because you know that you're going to have rain that's going to impact your 350,000 customers for the 108th running of the Indy 500, I still wouldn't change it for anything, and it's that passion that continues to drive you.
Yeah. So Mel, everybody has a different style and a different path of how they got where they were. And I chatted with you. You didn't grow up thinking you'd even be in sports, and here you are, as a leader, with the Pacers and all of the other sports organization here in Indianapolis. But tell us a little bit about. You're a Hoosier.
I am.
And there is something special I have learned about being a Hoosier, even though I wasn't born here. Yeah. I feel like I got that honor now that I am a Hoosier. But did you care about the Indianapolis 500? Were you a fan? Because I didn't really get that out of the conversation that we had. So tell us a little bit about how that sort of, because you were South Bend, right? This is where you grew up.
Yeah.
So.
So I get to, it's a mutual admiration society first. So I get to say when Allison emailed me and said, would you do call prep for this? Allison put this on my calendar, but 3 years ago, it's Allison, so I've been on for a while. I said, of course, if she asked. And then she said, would you do a call with Lyn St. to get ready? And I said, are you kidding me? Like, yeah, should I be interviewing her? Like, I don't understand. She's certainly a legend. And, if anybody in town was born to do the job they're doing and doing it better than anyone I could imagine, it's Doug. And he sets a high standard for the rest of us in town, because I don't get up at 3:30 in the morning dying to get into work. But now that's a goal. I grew up in South Bend, and as most of you, I think, know, who are Hoosiers, I listened to the race on the radio. So every Memorial Day weekend, we went camping with some family friends, and I remember, my youth was on Sunday, was listening to the race on the radio with all of our families, sort of running around and doing what you do when you're camping. It usually rained, of course, because we were camping, but it was just ingrained, and I never imagined I would get to go to the race. It just wasn't something. I came from a modest background we would have driven down to do, but I did get a chance to go in my 20s when the Republican convention was looking at Indianapolis as a potential site for a future convention, and we got to come in the most, you were, I'm sure, a big part of this, Doug, but because Mayor Goldsmith's office, I think, arranged it, but we got to go to a Boles Pacers game at Market Square Arena. We went to the parade on Saturday, and then I think we went to the game, walked down to the game, and then got to do the motorcade in on Sunday, and it was supposed to rain, and it didn't rain, and the whole race went off, and it was the most magical weekend. And I was living in DC at the time, and I just was so proud. It was such a great weekend for all these people from around the country at the Republican National Committee to see. I was so proud as a Hoosier to see how well we did, and then I finally got to see the race I'd listened to on the radio for 25 years at that point. So it was great. So I'm a racing fan, and anyone who's ever driven with me on the highway knows I want to be one of the race car drivers who stood up. My dad had a lead foot, and I inherited that. So
maybe you missed your calling, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Republican convention and all this. So your background really has predominantly been in politics. I know that. I read that, and we have somebody in common that we both admire, Susan Brooks, who you first worked for her and her staff, and also Dan Coates. So politics is probably, I don't know anything about politics, but one of the best experiences of survival, and
especially today.
well, but I think in any time. The few times, with the Women's Sports Foundation, I used to get to go to Washington, D.C. for National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and that's when I got a better sense of politics. When I would hear politicians talking in a group of people with non-politicians, with athletes, and I would hear them literally say two completely different points of view as they would talk to two different people. And I'm like, this is wrong. You either put your stake in the sand of what you believe in or you don't, or you just keep your mouth shut. But to debate or to have two different points of view that were opposite of each other, I hated that, But anyway, that's not my opinion of politics. But you went through that and survived that and actually, were very successful in it. But I want to talk a little about Susan Brooks as far as the mentorship role of possibly, that she played, because we talked a little bit about it. And I think that's critical, not always. I'll ask you if you'd had any mentors, Doug, I don't know. But I feel like sometimes we need role models or mentors to be able to see who we are. And so how could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I've been lucky in my career to have many mentors along the way, some men, some women. And I think something that you don't know when you're being mentored is that your mentor picked you. You didn't really pick them. I think typically they see something in you. I know I do that now today. They see something in you that you maybe didn't see in yourself, and they see the potential, and they want to help you and give you those opportunities. And Susan was certainly one of those. Dan Coates, who was my first boss out of college, I worked in the U.S. Senate for him, is one of the kindest, just an amazing leader. It was not very sharp elbows in our office, which is rare in Washington, and Susan's was the same. And there's a famous intern story. I was interning before I got hired, and I hung up on the Secretary of Defense, who was calling the senator not once but twice before Senator Coates asked me to get out of my seat and took the call from my desk. And I thought, well, that's my last day in my internship, so we'll try something else. But he not only wasn't it, but it was a good learning experience for me, and I wound up getting a job about a month later. So I think those relationships in your life are really important, and being responsive when someone's trying to mentor you and receptive to that is important too, because people don't want to waste their time. So if you don't show an interest, they're probably not going to show an interest back. But I certainly wouldn't be in the job that I'm in today, or sitting on the stage without, you know, a handful of people who really invested in me at a young age and throughout my career. I worked for Susan just 12 years ago, and Susan Brooks, some of you may know her, is just a phenomenal female, former U.S. attorney, worked for Mayor Goldsmith also, and just cares about people in a way that is pretty rare these days. You know, she really cared about her constituents, and it's easy to work in politics when you work for people who are good people, who you know are doing the right thing. Didn't mean I always agreed with them, but I knew why they were doing it, and it's a hard business, and so for me, those mentorships and relationships were really important.
So you mentioned about the community, and one of the things that my observations of coming here now all these years is, and I tell anybody this, is that Indianapolis is different, is people that live here in the community. A lot of communities have people that care about their community, and they support charities, and they do things, but generally it's a moment. They write a check, or they go to an event and they feel good about it because they're supporting a community or a charity of some sort. So people in Indianapolis, they're invested. They show up in every way. I mean, and I know, Doug, you've really nurtured that with the Speedway, with the 500 and everything, and then, you know, Susan, your role of a lot of community activities and support. So talk about the Indianapolis community. Either one of you, just go for it.
I can start. I mean, we're really fortunate in our community with our Indiana Sports Corporation that really is in charge of attracting and helping host events. And when we have big events that either the Pacers are putting on or the Speedway's putting on, helping support those. And they found a way to engage people in our community in a way that they volunteer, because they know that sometimes people that come for those events at the Speedway or downtown or wherever they are, it's their only time they've been to Indianapolis. And we're proud of where we live. So we've got these amazing volunteers that invest the time to make sure that as people come to Indianapolis, they're going to leave Indianapolis with an amazing impression of what Indianapolis is all about. If you talk to the people who came to the NBA All-Star game in the middle of the winter when it snows like crazy, and people leave here with an unbelievable impression of what the Pacers were able to put on, but more importantly, what our community was able to do. So this community really takes an awful lot of pride in events. You don't come to Indianapolis to see the mountains, you don't come to Indianapolis to the snow, but you come to Indianapolis and you experience Hoosier hospitality, which we talk about a lot, but it's a real thing. Hoosier hospitality is a feeling you get. If any of you came today and it was your first time, or came this week and it's your first time, and you landed at our airport, it starts with the way you're welcomed at our airport, the way you feel the cleanliness, the way you feel the welcomeness, the way that as you walk through, you see that we're a basketball community because you see about the Pacers. You see we're a racing community because there's that there 365 days a year. But then for each of those events, there was probably PRI stuff in there. You know why you're here, and you know if you're visiting that this community wants you here, and that's really about the volunteers, and those are the people that live here that take their time to welcome you here and to make sure you have a great experience. If you're in a hotel and you talk to the concierge, you talk to the front desk, they're armed with information about what's going on at Gainbridge Fieldhouse or what's going on at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway so that they can help you. But this is the secret sauce of Indianapolis. Is it's not just the Sports Corp, it's not just the Pacers, it's not just the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it's our entire community that volunteers to make sure that when you are here, you have an amazing experience. And there's no other community in the world that does what Indianapolis does.
I've not seen it. I mean, Mel, you were part of the Super Bowl committee, which, you know, was also, I mean, again, other cities can do that, but there's not they don't care. They just do it because they were told they needed to do it, you know, and so, you know, talk about that.
I agree. I mean, the people are the secret sauce we talk about here. And when I came back to work on the Super Bowl in 2009, so I was on staff for about 2.5 years, and there were ultimately, I think I was the 4th person on staff. There were 35 of us working on that, and then we had 10,000 volunteers. And we had a few lucky breaks with the weather and some other things, but one of my favorite stories that I heard was on Super Bowl Sunday morning, there were tailgaters for the Giants in one of the parking lots, and the TV stations, sort of like on race morning, they're out at 5:30 in the morning talking to people, and there's really nothing to cover yet, and they're talking to these tailgaters, and they said, you know, how's your time in Indy? And they said, oh my gosh, it's been amazing. And The only thing they were grilling or something is we forgot our hot sauce. And 4 different people brought them hot sauce. They could tell where they were. So someone biked it, someone walked it, someone drove down. I don't know how the 4th one got there, but you can work forever and not have that happen, right? That is something that we can't plan for. That is just, in every way, our community just goes above and beyond. And when we're looking at these big events or something like the 100th running, which was so historic, I think it was the event of the year for Sports Business Journal. We get together, all the, Visit Indy and the Sports Corp and downtown Indy and the mayor's office and the governor's office. And when we were looking at the NBA All-Star game, we called everybody together and said, here's the bid specs. Is everybody in? And if everybody's in, let's do this right. And if not, then we'll say we'll pass on this year, because everybody has to be behind it for it to work in a city like ours in the winter when it did snow 5 inches on Friday of that weekend. And that's how we look at all of them. That's how we approach the WNBA All-Star Game too. And I've worked on Republican conventions in 5 different cities: San Diego, New York, Philadelphia, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Tampa, Charlotte. I've worked on 8 Super Bowls, and nobody does it like this. And that is truly our secret sauce, is that community piece of it, coming together, everybody, everyone in their right seat on the bus, driving in the right direction from the beginning, and really being all in. The corporate community, everybody just, it's truly astonishing, and I think we take it for granted, but we shouldn't, because other cities don't work like this.
Well, we've had the same experience in putting this event on. So if any of you are planning events, Indianapolis is the first place you want to check out and see if they've got availability. Mel, you talked when we chatted, and I'm not sure I got this right, but I don't know if this came from working with Mel Simon. I mean, I think it's one of the, and I don't know all the history of who owns all the NBA's teams, but it's one of the few, if not the only, family-owned, or there was something about family-owned, I don't know.
Longest standing owner in the NBA, Herb Simon, yep.
Herb Simon, sorry.
No.
But something about the North Star. You said something about your North Star. Can you?
Yeah, I think we were talking about, it can be hard to be a leader in an organization today. And so I'm sure Doug feels this at times too. You've got younger employees who want maybe different things than some of your older employees or your fans, or at times, you may be, I think every business, not sports, but business, has been pressured to weigh in on political things, and especially in the last 4 or 5 years. And so it's hard if you don't have a North Star, if you're just sort of bouncing around. And when you work in politics, typically, or at least I've worked for people, and I know what they feel or think, we talk it through, and you know what direction you're headed. It can be harder for a business to do that. Some teams are owned by a group of owners, multiple owners, private equity now. There's other pieces involved in it. For us, I'm really grateful that the Simon family has owned this team for 41 years, and longest standing owners in NBA history. And Herb has been invested in Indianapolis for 50, 60 years now. And we have a real North Star. We're a community-focused teams, I would say. And that's what he always wants us to put first. And then we want to win championships too. But I think when you wake up every day and you're faced with what can be some difficult questions or situations, knowing what that is makes it easier to make the right decision for your organization and hopefully the community.
I think Mel just said something that's another secret sauce of Indianapolis and Indiana, is the fact that you have an owner like Herb Simon, you have an owner like the Holman George family, and now Roger Penske, that yes, it's a business and they want it to run well, but they also understand how important it is for the community. So as we make decisions, we look through things through 2 lenses. What's it do to our bottom line, and what's it do to the community or for the community? And you make decisions, oftentimes it may not be the best decision for your bottom line, but it's the better decision for your community. And when you have leaders and owners and organizations like that, it contributes to the community. I would say the Colts are the same way. I mean, we've got organizations that understand that, yeah, they've got to make sure that the P&L works, but at the end of the day, if the community doesn't work, it's going to be a rough time for all of our organizations. So we're really blessed in having folks like that who look at it through both those lenses, and it's just as important to contribute and prop up your community as it is to make sure your pocketbook gets lined.
And I think the other point is that those owners know each other and talk to each other. And so if we've got something going on, IMS is always supportive. We try to also do the same. The Colts and the Pacers collaborate on quite a bit. And I've been in other cities where that just doesn't happen. The teams don't talk to each other or support each other's initiatives. And I think the event owners are always surprised when you came to the NBA All-Star Game and we had decorated Indy cars with the teams. That sort of thing is just foreign to them. And then they see how much it can bring to the event to think of it that way. And so I think that's also what's unique about the collaboration here.
I loved it when the Lucas family got the title for the Lucas Oil Stadium, and then all these race cars and drag crews were all in there. I mean, that would have not happened, I don't think, in any other city.
And that's another family that as well is really invested in our community, and they're invested in charities. So again, a perfect fit for Indianapolis. It's not just about a name on a stadium, but it's about how do they help advance our community.
So Doug, what I remember though, it wasn't always the way it is at Indy now. I remember when I came here trying to get here, and it was in 1988 that Dick Simon gave me an opportunity to turn some laps because I was having a hard time convincing sponsors to give me $1 million when I'd never driven an Indy car, never driven around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, never raced an Indy car. I said, oh, that's a problem, is it? Well, so I told Dick, and Dick said, we can fix one piece of that. And I came here to it was a Goodyear tire test. And Dick, this was when it was owned by the Holman family. And so, you know, Dick Simon, he was going to always make something happen. And well, it didn't get approved. I forget who was up in that office that said no. And so Dick said, don't leave, you know, we'll figure it out. And so then the next morning I thought, well, you know, I'm going to run around the track. So I went down there because I actually stayed up in the Turn 2 suites. And I went down to the person that was down there at like 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I said, you know, I'd like to just do a lap around the track by foot. I was going to run around there. And he goes, oh, hold on a minute, and then he goes to a phone, and I don't know who the heck he called. And I always would think of Clarence Clagle, but I don't think that was it, but it doesn't matter. So he came back and he said, no, you can't do that. Excuse me? I'm not going to damage it, and I'm not going to steal anything, you know. He said, don't feel bad. We didn't let Roger Penske ride his bicycle around the track either. Like that, I guess, was going to make me feel better. But anyway, so I didn't get to do it, and ultimately I did get to turn laps. But the track was very, it was like Fort Knox. I mean, and it was only the Indy 500. And so, not to belabor it, but you know what I'm saying. So now, I mean, it's transformed. I believe you've been part of that transformation because not just in the ownership of Roger Penske, but even before whatever your title was, but it was like, we now have vintage racing here. You created a dirt track, and we've got the BC 39 honoring Brian Clausen. You know, you have brought sports car racing here, endurance sports car racing here. I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of that is your passion. You've just convinced the Speedway. This is a facility that, yes, it's hallowed ground, but you know, not only it's good for the community, but people need to come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and race, and the runoffs were here. I mean, I just believe you've been a big part of being that cheerleader to change the culture inside. And of course, now with Penske ownership, I'm sure that's a little more supportive. But am I making some assumption here, or am I right?
No, I think you're right on all those fronts. I think we took a page out of Mel's book in basketball arenas and football stadiums. You know, a basketball arena is primarily a basketball arena, but they're doing 225 nights a year of something going on inside the venue there. And they're using that venue to bring people to the city of Indianapolis, to bring people together, to hopefully build a database so that you can convince them to be a Pacer or a Fever fan. I mean, and so for us, it was a little bit of, we were behind the 8 ball, but let's do what everybody else does. And let's get people to come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And the vintage race is a perfect example. Having vintage cars on there, it may not fit exactly the formula that we've always been, but what it does is it allows people who love motorsport, who've invested in it through their own cars, a lot of those folks have a lot of money, get them to come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I want them to have on the back of their desk at work a picture of their car going across the yard of bricks so that they start thinking about the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and how important the Indianapolis Motor Speedway really is. So we do about 140 days a year where there's something going on track. In your day, when you're trying to run around the track or trying to get that test in the track, it was basically May with a handful of test days throughout the year when they were doing tire testing, which we really don't do anymore. So we fill in a lot of those days with other activities. Sports cars is important. We want to connect with all the different OEMs. Right now, the NTT IndyCar Series is Honda and Chevrolet, but we have Ferrari, we have Porsche, we have Mercedes, we have all these different brands that come to the racetrack. BMW, they come there and they're invested and they're bringing their top salespeople in, they're bringing their biggest customers in, and it's introducing them to our brand, giving them a chance to physically touch and feel and sometimes drive the facility, which I hope creates somebody that falls in love with the sport. And at the end of the day, it's great for our community. You mentioned the runoffs. So for those of you that know SCCA, the runoffs is their big national championship, and it is a massive event, except it's a participant-based event. So when we had the first one here, I was a little concerned about what's that going to do for our community, because it's not going to bring fans, right? It's going to bring the driver, their family, and their crew that helps them out. They've saved all year, a lot of them. This is their big thing. And when that was over, I walked up and down Main Street and talked to every single one of the businesses on Main Street, which was right outside the front door of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then the restaurants and hotels that were along Crawfordsville Road. And to a business, they knew that it wasn't a public event, and they were blown away with how much business they got from those folks who came in the community, and then they celebrated and took their teams out to dinner. And those are the decisions we make that the SCCA runoffs doesn't really contribute to our bottom line, but it does contribute to the community, and it gives us an opportunity to connect with somebody, and hopefully we get them to tune on to an NTT IndyCar Series race or come to an Indianapolis 500 or a Brickyard 400.
Well, the other thing I think is the fans. I've been also here long enough to know that a lot of fans of the Indianapolis that live in the community, they're fans of the Indianapolis 500, not necessarily race fans because they haven't been to other race events. But because you have all these other race events happening now, like you mentioned the vintage race, they're like, well, what is that all about? And so you've offered something for the community to come back, and now they're becoming race fans, not just Indy 500 fans.
Correct, and the best marketing tool, and we all talk about marketing and data and how do you find fans and how do you go cultivate that next generation or keep the ones that you have. The best marketing tool we have to drive somebody to be interested in or ask questions about and ultimately attend something at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway's Cars on Track. When you can hear that noise in the community, or we can convince the television station to come out and do something about a vintage race or a cool vintage car, or some 80-year-old who's driving his 80-year-old car at the Speedway, all those stories, that earned media that we gather is the best marketing tool we have for the Indianapolis 500, even if it's a different race, or for the Brickyard 400. And that's really why you have to be active. You have to be busy. You need to make sure that you're doing everything you can to remind people that the biggest day of the year, Christmas Day every year, is 166 days from now. Actually, it's 165 days and 23 hours from now at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway when we have the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. And all those days allow you to talk about that. And that's the same with basketball. If you get somebody to come to Gamebridge and they go, wow, what an unbelievable arena, you got a chance to bring them back for other things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I used to tell everybody that, I mean, the month of May, when it was the month of May, I said it was just like Christmas every day, so that's the way I looked at it. What brings you joy? I'm going to start with you, Mel. What brings you joy? I mean, let's face it, I know every day's not the dream job, and there are days that the dream is a nightmare, but we all live that. But there's something that brings you, I got to do it again, you know. Sometimes it's just pure love of the sport, but sometimes it's just whatever. So what brings you joy?
Lots of things, thankfully,
Good.
and hopefully for everybody here too. But professionally, I think, and Lyn and I were talking about this. We have about 350 employees on the business side that a lot of whom are young, had been with us actually less than 4 years post-pandemic, and I love giving those teammates an opportunity that they didn't have before, helping them succeed, the kinds of things people did during NBA All-Star. That was kind of one of these all hands on decks. I think May is like that probably for Doug's team, and they just hit it out of the ballpark. Bad analogy for a basketball team, but you get what I'm saying. And so it was giving people, we do have so many events and we have them coming at us quickly all the time, and so people have a lot of opportunity, and I just love seeing them just exceed expectations and see what their potential is and want to do more with it. And I think on a daily basis that's great. I mean, the other thing that's super fun is when you win. The Pacers went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and the Fever made it into the playoffs, and we just had a successful year on the court for both teams, and nothing is more fun than winning. And unfortunately, I don't affect that as much as I would like, but it is sure fun when you're along for the ride. And playing basketball up through Memorial Day weekend it makes this whole community a lot more fun to be in.
Before I go to you, Tamika Catchings, who I think, is somebody that came here to play, for the Fever, and that has really embraced the community and gives back and all of that. So I'm thinking of some of the superstars, and so there's this other superstar that you sort of have in your home right now, who we really wanted to get here, but invited, but not so successful. So Caitlin Clark, how's that been?
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to have a really good first season as CEO, I would draft Caitlin Clark. The rest will take care of itself. It's been amazing. She was named this morning the Time Athlete of the Year. I think she's on the cover of Time magazine, and which is it's amazing, right? I mean, there are star players in every sport, and but very few of them impact the sport the way she has in her rookie year, and just every metric that you could imagine is better than I could have ever imagined. And I think I sort of joked that it was a rocket ship that we all hung on to last year. Maybe it was a racing car we hung on to, an Indy car, but I'm hoping to drive that car a little bit better next year. And I think we have restructured to be able to support that team a little bit better as it continues to grow, and frankly that league becomes more mature. It's 50 years younger than the NBA, and so it's growing quickly. And I don't know that many WNBA teams, you may not know this, but there are only 5 and soon to be 6 WNBA teams that are affiliated with an NBA team, and the others are independent teams. They're in Atlanta and Dallas and others, they're not affiliated. And so I don't know how you could have maximized the opportunity to have her on your team. We flexed our entire Pacers team into that, from sales and player relations and security and everything, to stand that team up in about 2 months. And I'm really proud of everybody who did that while we were in the Eastern Conference Finals run. So it's just phenomenal. And if you haven't been to a Fever game, I hope you get to one this coming season. I promise it's going to be a good time.
I shared with you that I was one of those. I was the 100th ticket buyer. That I guess they had to have 100 ticket buyers to actually get to get a game or a team approved, and I was really proud of that. So I've got my jersey. It's all framed and all that kind of stuff. It's cool.
Can I tell a Caitlin Clark story?
Yes, please.
I think because this is a motorsport community and you guys understand the Indianapolis 500, and you can help me tell this story. So the Fever draft Caitlin Clark, and immediately everybody's like, hey, why didn't she drive the pace car? Why did she wave the green flag? And I start getting nasty notes, like, you're not a good promoter and you got to remind people, she's a basketball player. She's never played in the WNBA in her life. We need her to be a basketball player because we need the Fever to be successful. And oh, by the way, they have a West Coast swing that ends in Las Vegas the night before the Indianapolis 500. It's not like we didn't think that we should use Caitlin Clark for something. She has another job. And we're hearing about it again this year. It's her basketball season. We want her to win basketball games. So as you see people who are like, man, those people at Speedway aren't very bright, they should figure out a way to get Caitlin Clark involved, remind them that her primary job is to go win basketball games for the Fever. Someday we will have Caitlin and maybe the entire team out at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but we want her to focus on her primary job, not on driving a pace car or waving a flag or doing something at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And it's not that we haven't thought about it or we haven't had a conversation with Mel. We want to do the right thing for our community. So just make sure, since you guys understand motorsport and how it works, she has a job too. It would be like asking Elio Castroneves the night before the 500 to go to Las Vegas to help kick off some event there. They have to focus on their job. So, and then
she's a race fan though, isn't she?
She's an unbelievable advocate for a lot of things. She's been amazing in the community. You see her at Butler games. You see her at Pacer games. You couldn't ask for a better person in our community. And I'm certain we will get her to the Speedway at some point in time. But right now, it is WNBA basketball season. We want her to be winning basketball games.
She was at Long's Donuts, I think, last week.
She was, which is pretty cool.
So for me,
I want your joys. Yes.
So joys for me, I can think of 3. I love seeing kids come with their parents or grandparents to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Nothing makes me happier than seeing that next generation of fan, especially when they come with a grandparent or a parent who's been doing it for a long time, and then having a conversation with those parents or grandparents, and they can tell, I'm so excited this is the third or fourth or fifth generation that is an Indianapolis Motor Speedway fan. I have these little pins, they call them president pins. I've been doing this since 2016, so that I can get down on my knee and I can hand it to a little kid and say, thanks for bringing your parents. It's really cool you brought them, because I want them to know that they're the next race fan, and I want their parents or grandparents to go, see, this is why you come here, because this brand cares about you, and I want to develop them there. So that for sure is one. I call customers every night, 3 nights a week now, on my way home, and just say thanks. We don't get to celebrate the 109th run of the Indianapolis 500 in 166 days without you. I know it's a commitment. I know you have to get here early. This isn't a 2-hour game. You're here for an entire day. It really doesn't happen without you. The reason it is here is because of fans. And when I hear how they fell in love with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, or even the problems they have and what they want us to change to make their experience better, it's a really amazing experience when you get to talk with those customers and hear why and how they fell in love with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But maybe the thing I enjoy the most is when you get to celebrate a win, not in a team aspect, but when you get to celebrate a win of a teammate. So when somebody on our team closes a deal, or when somebody on our team sets up a gate system, the gates get through in a way that you want them to, when you can celebrate the people that actually do the work and thank them, there's nothing like celebrating your staff and making sure that they know that you care about it. And I'm even taking some pride now in sending notes to Roger and saying, hey, so-and-so, this is an amazing job, and then occasionally get a note back from somebody, hey, Roger just sent me a note with an emoji. So the 87-year-old sending, the thumbs up emoji or the big muscle emojis. So those are the 3 things I think that I find the most joy in.
You found some joy when I ran down pit lane because I had just drank milk on the podium because of winning a vintage race.
I did find joy in that.
I remember that. You just lit up because I was so happy.
I light up every time I see you. It's happened for a long time now, and it hasn't changed. I'm just open about it now to let everybody know. And my wife knows, so it's all good.
I just remember how happy I was. It was so silly, but I was just enjoying it. Yeah. That's when I got joy, and you just looked really happy to see me.
I'm always happy to see you, especially when you've had a victory at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
I drank milk on the podium. So skill transfers. It's not like this is the job I'm going to have, and these are the skills that I need to take to get that job, right? So could you share with everybody, because everybody's got careers out here or aspires to have careers out here, and maybe it isn't their dream job or it isn't what they dream about, but I know that there's nuggets that we learn from doing something that we may not enjoy at all or we may not be wanting to do that then helps us, that next door opens and you think, thank God I put up with that or whatever. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but so the skill transfers that you kind of value that you've learned from other jobs that have helped you with this job.
Well, I think we're all learning every day, right? You have an opportunity to learn from every boss, whether it's a good boss or a difficult boss. You learn the things that work and the things that don't. I think the things, I sell tickets. It's really what I do. I'm not that smart. So what you got to do, you surround yourself with amazingly smart people and let your passion take over. Give them the opportunity to go be successful. Allow people to tell you when they think that you're not in the right spot, and be comfortable with knowing that you're trying to adjust to that. I think is really important. It's hard, right? Our ego doesn't want to hear that we're doing something wrong, but you got to be comfortable in that situation. But for me, I've just learned that there are people better at their jobs than I am, and really I feel like my job, we talked about the North Star, and so for me, there's 2 things that I really want to do, is let people do their jobs and make sure they're focused on 2 things. What's central to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway DNA, and by that I mean, what are the things that everybody at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway would believe is absolutely important to the Speedway. So let's use the 500 for example. It's Memorial Day Sunday, it's 500 miles, it's 33 cars, the fastest 33 cars. It's the yard of bricks, and so none of you got that, right? It's the yard of bricks, it's the bottle of milk. There's some of those things that are central to the DNA. So you want to make sure that the decisions that your team are making aren't altering what's central to the DNA. As you get away from the DNA, you have to make changes because you got to attract that next generation. So that is super important that you're thinking about making sure that's where we are. And the one that's most important is do the right thing for the customer. As long as we're doing the right thing for the customer and we're consistent with the customer, I think those 2 things are the most important things we can do in the event space. Stay true to your brand and then make sure you're making the right decision for the customers, and then go let the people that are smarter that work around you, go let them execute.
Yeah, so for me, I would say so having been 20 years in politics and now about 15 in sports, is I have learned how to, over time, manage people, projects, and budgets. And depending on the job, I'm certainly a jack of all trades. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant, although I wish I was some days. And so it's in varying degrees. When I was on Capitol Hill, I did not have a lot of people. I had a very small budget, and I had a lot of projects. In this job, I've got a lot of all three. And I think the other thing I learned along the way in politics that's been very helpful here is presence. So I worked for Vice President Cheney in the White House, and you are going to get called every day and have to run into the West Wing and brief him on something you didn't know about before, 15 minutes before. And you better be able to look like you know what you're talking about and get the facts together pretty quickly and have that presence. And I did not have that before I went there, I don't think. And now I'm regularly interacting with our ownership and others in town, and that presence has served me well over time. And I'll be super transparent with everybody. I'm about 6 months into being the CEO of the company. I was the COO before, and I'm a natural COO. I'm very good at keeping the trains running on time and keeping all the projects going. And a CEO has a completely different job than that. And so I am now pushing myself for that North Star vision, more of what Doug was just talking about, and delegating those things that are easy for me to do and to fall back into, but are not what my job is anymore. That's not what they're paying me to do. And so that's, I think, going to be an evolution. It will take me a year or two to get into, but I'm looking forward to it and trying to push myself to do that.
That's really helpful. That's really good information. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it, which may not be a good wrap, but acknowledging that these probably weren't your dream jobs, but yet you're living your dream by having these jobs and learning and happy. Is there a next dream? Is there something you dream about? Maybe not in a career, maybe or as a job per se, but is there a next dream? You dreaming about anything?
I dream about the 109th running the Indianapolis 500, selling out the grandstands.
Yeah.
You dream that every year. Just add a number to it.
Yeah, no, I don't. Honestly, I'm 58, right? So I'm at a point where if I was 28, maybe I could tell you, here's what I want to do in 10 years, here's what I want to do in 20 years. Ellen Saul, who works with me, and we knew each other back when I worked for the mayor and she worked for an event company here in town, and we were like the young people. And Mel, you probably know this feeling. We were the young people in the community, and then the last couple of years we start looking at each other and said, how do we get to be the old people in the room?
How did that happen?
But it also reminds you, and this is why I love you so much, you retired from racing and you could very well have just gone off and done your thing, but you created this wake, and you felt there was a responsibility. The wake you've created and the momentum of that water is to bring people along with you. And I think when you begin to realize that you're on the downside, which is not exactly what I mean, because I'm not retiring anytime soon, but you start to really celebrate others, and you want to give others that opportunity and bring them forward. So you start to think more about, well, what's the career path for Louis Kissinger, or what's the career path for Susie Elliott, or what's the career, I just start picking names throughout our organization, and how do you help them achieve their goals? And that really sort of becomes your dream, because I want to be the guy who's 78 sitting in the grandstands and going, see that Kristen Whedon over there? She ran HR, now she runs the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I mean, that's what you really want to see, and you want to, and I don't want them to take my credentials away. So you got to make sure that they keep on the credential list. But no, that's really it's really weird when you start thinking less about what do you want to do and more about what do you want to see somebody else do. And it really is joy in watching other people succeed.
That's sweet. That's great.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have this. I didn't expect to have this job, and I don't really know if I'll have another or what the next act would be. But for me, it's really important as the first woman in this job. I think there's 5 in the NBA writ large, but in our organization to have it, and that I do it really, really well. So I'm not the last, and hopefully one of the young men or women in the organization now, it gets groomed to take that job, and we don't have to go outside of Indianapolis to find that kind of talent. But hopefully there are many women behind me, and it's not something that you even have to talk about, because you assume it could be a man or a woman in the future. And I really Lyn, applaud what you've started here. It's really inspirational to come into a room of women who are working in want to work in every aspect of motorsports, and to have this many men here too. I mean,
Thank you for
you can't do
acknowledging
it.
that.
Can't do this without the help of men. You're kidding yourself if you think that you can. Everybody has to be involved in it, but kudos for this huge crowd. I think it's super cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for taking the time, because I know you're busy. Thank you for coming out and sharing our passion for this wonderful sport that we love in this city.
500s and 166. Just making sure we
Did
all
you
got that down, right?
Did you change the number of hours though? Because it was like 20 minutes
Yeah,
ago
yeah.
you said that. No, but seriously, thank you. And Doug, special thanks for saying yes when I said I wanted to bring it to Indianapolis. But also, you know, it's actually part of the culture that it isn't just saying yes and then to do the minimal amount to make it happen. It's like, what do you need? What do you need? You know, and how can we make it better? And you have no idea what it meant when I saw those signs on those boards that had the WIMNA logo and all of that. I mean, that was like a real welcoming, you know, all of it. And so thanks for being in this community, embracing me in this community, embracing all of us in this community. I hope you all continue to come back, have your events here, come to the PRI show, because if you're going to work in this industry, the PRI show is an industry trade show that you don't have to come every year, but you need to stay current. And how to do that is to spend 2 or 3 days at that, and then you know who's who and who's what, and you're on the right path. So thanks for your time and for sharing, you know, some of your past and your present and your future with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I think we owe Lyn. She's worked on this for so long, and when I walked in the back of the room today to see all these people right here, without your tireless effort and the doors that got closed and finding doors that open and continuing to open them to put something together like this, because you truly care about this community, you truly care about this mission. Let's hear it for Lyn and all the work she puts in.
Thank you. Okay, 36 seconds left. We're done. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Oh, we're going to do a photo?